Everyone eats out, but people often miss how the food arrives on their plate. Every meal has a story of growers, suppliers, founders, and operators making it all happen. Welcome to Grounded. I'm Lauren Mitchell, and each week I will bring you conversation with the amazing people behind the brands you know and the ones you'll want to know. Grounded is powered by the Buyer's Edge platform, the leading food service digital procurement network, powered by data, software, and collaborative relationships. Let's get grounded. I'm so happy to be speaking with today's guest. He's a procurement and supply chain leader, brand ambassador, and purchasing strategist. Nearly 3 decades of leadership experience in the food and beverage industry. Deeply involved in the hospitality space, a regular moderator and participant at NRA's Supply Chain Expert Exchange conferences, and helping to shape conversations that drive our industry forward. Director of Procurement and Logistics at Cooper's Hawk Winery and Restaurants, Dan Gould, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Lauren.
It's great to have you. It was wonderful to see you in person last week, actually out in Monterey, California.
It was a great time.
Yeah, it was awesome. Awesome time. I'm very excited to have this conversation. We've talked a lot about your operations background, and I think that's fed into your strategy in the procurement space here. And you've got definitely the perspective from the operator level. We'll hear a little bit about Cooper's Hawk as well. But why don't we just start there and bridging the two, operations. How would you say that your background in operations has influenced your approach to your procurement strategy today?
Yeah, it's I go back to when I first moved over into supply chain. I'll recall having a conversation with Tim McHenry, our founder, and he said to me very simply, and it's always kind of stuck with me, is that no matter what, whenever you're stuck on a decision, trying to determine what we need to do as a organization moving forward, if you always keep your operator's hat on, it will always lead you to the right answer. And so putting our operators first, to me, is always the critical part of our business. I remember being an operator. They work long, challenging hours, and we make decisions in supply chain and in other departments on a daily basis that affect those teams for weeks and months to come. And and it can be challenging if we make the wrong decision. The second part about it is, as an operator, obviously you're taking care of your guests every single day. And, for us, our wine club members are a huge part of our company. It's what drives our businesses. And so those relationships that we build with our guests, that's really carried over for me on the procurement side. It's easy to have transactional relationships with suppliers. To me, having that relationship, that long-term partnership, is all about developing that relationship, whether it's with a supplier or a distributor, or even internally with other departments. I really I can't overstate, to me, how important the management of relationships and the building of your networks. It really, your network, to me, shapes who you are for the rest of your career.
You said something interesting and unique there. I've had a lot of people talk about the importance of relationships in this business. It's very true. Supplier partners can be critical to a brand's success and even growth. Our distributor partners or grower partners. But you mentioned internal relationships as well. And I think that's a fantastic point. And when you talk about someone's network, I think great too for any of our listeners that aren't in the hospitality business but want to break into it. It's your experience and your relationships and your background that absolutely bring value along with you to really any business, but especially in the hospitality industry.
Yeah, for sure. There's so much to be said for it. We're talking internally. I think it's easy for a lot of companies to live in silos, and every department kind of just focuses in on their own thing. And we're guilty of it as well. And that's something that we really try to focus on, to try to bridge that gap so that we're not, that everybody kind of knows what each other's working on. It's not a perfect system. We're we don't we're I'm not going to sit here and say that we've got it all figured out on that side, but certainly, like you mentioned, growing up in the industry, um, you know, coming to work in supply chain, it it was it was different coming into Cooper's Hawk. I had never done supply chain before. I'd only worked in operations, and so I didn't really understand the importance of having peers um, outside of our own company. I felt like I had enough resources within my own company. Um, you know, I guess a little shameless plug, but the supply chain executive exchange really taught me how important it is to have those peers outside of your company, and you never know where those resources are gonna come into play. Um, you know, it's you kind of gravitate towards thinking that you have to have a peer that is in the same space as yours. Maybe polished casual, like they've got to have that same type of menu, or what value can they bring to me? Um, and it's not about that. I mean, breakfast companies buy bacon, they buy produce. Um, you can you can find great peer networking in a variety of ways. And, the interactions that I've had at different conferences, not just that one, but different conferences over the years, um, have really forged some amazing relationships that I have today that I would not have thought of and didn't think of when I was first starting in supply chain, 12 years ago.
Yeah, you'll never know where you're gonna meet them and then when you're gonna need them. But we actually had an account
Exactly.
at the Brinker conference this week, and she went alone. And I've done that too, where you're going to a big brand conference. There's a lot of suppliers there, and I was like, "How did it go? How did you find time in between meetings?" And she's like, "I actually wound up meeting what I call a girl gang of 5 suppliers. One was in seasonings, and we're in produce, and just like we'd hung together. I'm like, that's great. That's a fantastic way to bolt on and learn other pieces of the business too. So it's just at these events.
Yeah, I mean, piggybacking on that, if I can, I mean, we do our annual conference just like the Brinker probably does, and you know, hearing about from our suppliers afterwards and seeing like some of the friendships from suppliers that have formed, people that are in completely different spaces as far as supplier relationships, and I just love hearing that, and our conference, we take a lot of pride in the experiences of our suppliers at the conference. It's uh, it's very important to us to create that value for them. They're obviously investing a lot of time and effort and in helping us support that conference, and it's amazing to hear some of the great feedback from those different suppliers. Tom Backer on the Fresh Concepts team is one of them. He's been a longtime supporter of us for that. So it's great to see those connections that are formed.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Okay, going back to our operations and procurement topic, I want you to put your hat back on when you were on the operations side, and perhaps some of the inefficiencies that you always wish procurement would solve. I think that there were a lot of people that are out there that are franchisees, and they kind of look into the buy side, and they just wonder why it's being done a certain way, right? So, what were there any pieces of that, and perhaps are you solving them now, having had that operator hat on?
I think a lot about that, from an operations perspective, and I think it's easy to say, hey, supply chain inefficiency, operational inefficiencies. There's a lot of different ways that you can kind of go back and forth. To me, um, you know, from an operator's perspective, supply chain is pretty simple. I don't want to think about them. Like I don't want to have to depend on supply chain, and it's kind of like that spot that I don't want to say thankless, but it's a spot that if you're talking about supply chain, then something went wrong. Um, and when it comes down to it, the suppliers need uh, you know plates and tomatoes and chicken and what and linen, no matter what it is, right? And it's up to us to figure out, even when operations makes the mistake, it's up to us to figure out how to get it there, and that's what we do. And it's interesting, kind of tying that again to the operations background, right? As an operator, you just figured stuff out. um you know and uh and we have that same mentality in supply chain. We'll figure it out. We'll get it there one way or the other. We're going to get it there. Um, and that's really those two, um, those two areas of operations and supply chain, really where kind of coming together. It's so important for our operators to just stay focused on our wine club members, our guests, our team members. I don't want them worrying about where their pots and pans are going to arrive, and if their produce delivery is getting there on time.
How about a particular procurement decision that you feel it was because of your lens and operations that completely changed the outcome or the way that you handled it? Is there any examples that you can draw from?
Yeah, I don't think a lot about like actual procurement decisions. I think a lot, in regards to that more from a distribution decision. We recently moved to key drops in our restaurants, and that was one thing that I thought in my head, like, man, if I was an operator back in the day, and I could have my product sitting there waiting for me, this is a no brainer, to make this change. So that was definitely something where putting my operator hat on influenced our decision as to whether or not we needed to make that change. But yeah, not as much on the procurement side, but definitely more on the logistics side.
All right. So getting more tactical, how has your approach to vendor partnerships changed now that you're on the procurement side? We've talked a little bit about supplier and partnerships already, but
I would actually say that it hasn't. I think about, um, as an operator, your guests are, for us, like, our guests are our wine club members. There are team members and everything, and moving that over into procurement. My vendors and my supplier partners, those are my guests. The same time and energy that I would focus on as an operator in getting to know and developing relationships with my guests. Those are the same approaches that we take in procurement. And it's not just me; it's our whole team. We've got multiple people on our team that have operations background. And we all have that same mentality. Um, we want to approach it just like we did in our restaurants. They're a part of our community just as much as our team members and our guests are. And it's important to us to to have just a genuine care, for them as our partners, and I think that's what makes us different. I know everybody wants to have great relationships with vendor partners. That's not unique. I feel like the genuineness, and we talk about. I mentioned our general manager conference. I get those comments from our supplier partners afterwards, just about how much it means to them, the the transparency and how much we include them in that. And we take that approach year round with our business reviews, and just the constant communication that we have with them.
I want to touch more on business reviews actually and that communication piece because you were lovely enough to come up with an idea that I've actually put into place myself for a few of our brands, and that has been scorecarding. And when people hear that term, it sounds like report card and it sounds one way, but it truly is a benefit for both parties to understand their hand and place in the value chain of the relationship and just how things are run. It's starting off that you're, same foot lockstep together. Can you talk a little bit about where that idea was born in and specifically what benefits you found in that process?
Yeah, it's interesting that you bring that up. It actually is a great example and one of the first examples of the peer networking that developed those scorecards. I can't take full credit for it. I'll take some partial credit for it, but that was something from a few years back that we were talking actually at the supply chain conference and discussing what other companies do, and there was a couple of companies that dabbled in it and such, um and uh together with a few of us we actually wrote the scorecards that we use today. And the first time that we used it was at our business reviews with all of our produce distributors back a couple of years ago, which was great. We brought all of our produce distributors in for a little summit. We talked about our company and the growth and the plans that we had coming. And then we broke off into individual, like 30-minute sessions with each one and went through and talked about all the things that were most meaningful to us as a company. Very, very transparent, and with our expectations. Yeah, there was numbers and scores in there. We really tried to steer them away from focusing in on, whether they were a 3 or a 4 or a 5, and walking away with what are the 1, 2, 3 KPIs that really meant the most to us as it pertained to their performance for the last year. They were great conversations. We continue to use them today, and have tried to expand them into our supplier relationships as well.
I love that you started with produce distributors. I think there's a lot of pride. They're family-owned businesses. They're different in every state. And you guys work with a program manager who manages those relationships for you guys. But what it showed is it shows those distributor partners that you want to make sure they see you and you will make things this, which sometimes is not always the case because to your earlier point, unless there's a problem, like there doesn't move it at all. Um, and I think that that's such an excellent way to also communicate back to them what the brand's values are for that year, the focus points, distributors who work that final mile so hard day in, day out and pull the boxes and roll it into your stores to get to hear from you and hear about what's going on with the brand.
Yeah, I think it's so critical. I mean, we probably do, I don't know, 10 to 15 business reviews a year. We've got a big one with our broadliner coming up next week, where we're bringing all of our account managers from across the country in to here, just like we did with the produce distributors a couple of years ago. And I know, like you mentioned, all the produce distributors operate differently. And you know, I think one of the things that we tried to do with that summit, that with all of them coming in, was even though that they have their own businesses and they all operate differently, the expectations and the KPIs that we have of them are the same. It's the same level playing field, whether you've got 20 restaurants or 5 that you're supporting. Our expectations are still the same of all of you, and that's why we thought it was important that they heard a kind of overarching message first before we sat down with them and individually went through where their performance was at.
How about contingency planning? How can you walk us through how your team builds and tests these with your suppliers, whether it's a new item or a backup distribution path?
Yeah, this is definitely a work in progress. I would say, with our current suppliers, the big focus is through these business reviews. It's a lot of conversations. It's definitely been a topic, since COVID as a primary focus of ours to understand what their plans are. How much at risk are we based off of how much inventory do they have? Do they have multiple storage locations for products, or is it all stored in one spot? We were challenged with a situation a couple of years ago in which one of our suppliers had a fire, and it wiped out not only all of their inventory of our ready to use product, but it also all of their ingredients to make the next, the next batches and such. That was a big challenge, and we were able to pivot pretty quickly and utilize a different company. Um, and, and I go back to the supplier relationships and the networking that for us to be able to pivot as quickly as we did to a completely different company to get product to all of our restaurants, within a couple of weeks, we wouldn't have been able to do that unless we already had a great relationship with that supplier. They recognized the importance of the call, stepped up quickly, figured out how to get product around to our restaurants as fast as possible. And yeah, I mean, it wasn't easy. Like I might be making it sound like it was, but it was. We all jumped in that each department that was affected and jumped in and got it figured out. But that really taught us that, like, even the ones that don't seem that they're much at risk, uh, we've got to have plans for it. And through those business reviews and that conversation that we have with them, we get a good idea of where they sit. And then, as you have other conversations with other suppliers, you're always thinking about, hey, could this be a backup plan? Could this be someone else in the event that we have an issue? What's the next, the next option? And you start to just bring product in to know whether or not, hey, is this approved if I need to move quickly or not, so that we don't have to go through that process. But it's very much a work in progress, for us.
Yeah, preloaded approved subs are always a great thing in produce. I will say that. And I do recall the fire you're talking about. It was a crazy time in our business. Mm. I love talking about new items. There's a lot of data points one can draw from, guest feedback, your culinary team, and then of course industry trends, right? What data points is Cooper Hawks pulling from in that decision process? Or on that part.
Yeah, yeah. This is one of the reasons why I love working for Cooper Shawkin, in particular with our culinary team and our chief culinary officer, Matt McMillan. Menu inspiration, he taught me very early on when I joined the supply chain team, that for him, menu inspiration comes from anywhere. It could be a supplier conversation that I have, a trend online that either he or I see, or someone else on our team sees, a billboard driving down the expressway, or just a great meal on a Friday or Saturday night. I recently had the opportunity of traveling with Matt to IFPA this past week to see some amazing growers and interact with them and walk the expo. It's so cool to see Matt's mind work in that environment. I never lose interest in just watching him interact with the growers, interact with suppliers. The way that he sees the possibility of ingredients and different flavors, it just continues to inspire me and not just him. He's got a team of 4 chefs: Chef Randall, Chef Chris, Chef Lisa. All of them, they just continue to open my eyes to new flavors and profiles and approaches to culinary approaches, to that would really resonate with our guests. And I think about my role in that, and it's easy to say, well, I'm just always looking for new ingredients, and it's not. To me, it's not just that. Like my role to me is to continue to find ways to feed their creativity,
Mm.
and that can come in a lot of different ways. Some of it is sourcing new ingredients, but it's also finding new avenues, new experiences for them to participate in, along with me, so that I can kind of see how their mind works and what interests them, so I can constantly be on the lookout for things. I was recently talking with Chef Matt, after I got a trade magazine sent to me in the mail, And I like to go through and just flip through. And I look through and I'll just pick out things that look interesting to me, like something that I would want to eat. And as simple as it might sound, just removing those pages of the things that are interesting to me. You would think that a chef of his magnitude, um, that have started brands and such with other companies would not find motivation or even find a conversation like that interesting. He took the time. We sat there for almost 20, 30 minutes and went page by page through those ones that I picked out. Um, and he wanted to know why. Why is this thing interesting to you? Why was this plate presentation appealing to you? What ingredients on this list stood out to you? And for him to take that time, with me, just speaks volumes to how that, um, you know, going back to your question, how many different ways those or places those data points can come from.
Well, my hat goes off to him for his curiosity too. It's that intellectual curiosity that he clearly has, and asking those questions that makes him, the creative and expert that he is. Love that he brought Chef to the field. I think it's so cool. What a great opportunity for Chef, but also to get boots on the ground in the field with the growth partners. Hear about we did a tour at Nature Ripe with understanding the seed breeding and how seeing these sweetest batch berries now pop up in the marketplace, the many 5 to 8 years it takes to really master just that one variety that winds up hitting with all the different tones, right? So fascinating, to get down there. So I'm sure he just adored it.
Yeah, we had the opportunity to tour Green Gate and Ippolito, which we've recently done some partnerships with, and see some of their production facilities, which is always fascinating. It's amazing when you go into those types of places with Matt or with the culinary team. There's always something that comes out of those, where he sees an ingredient or he sees something. We're focused over here, and all of a sudden something's going down a line over there, and he's like, "Hey, what is that? What's going on over there?" And that's always really interesting. We saw some interesting things out in the field too, like the plant tape at TNA, seeing how fast. They were talking about how long it takes to plant product, and then how they were able to change it to like a 3 or 4 person crew and do it in a few hours versus taking an entire day. That was pretty fascinating.
Yeah, really neat to see how technology is supporting the fields and harvest capabilities out there.
Yeah.
All right. So modernizing procurement strategy, want to get to more forward conversation about, how things are evolving and changing in this business. In a previous interview, I heard you mention moving away from category managers, and this may not even be the case, but I heard that and it interested me. What does the future ready supply chain org chart look like to you?
Yeah, it's an interesting question and one that can be debated, quite a bit. But I think to me, when you look at the amount of technology and data analytics, you really kind of break down skill sets. It's really hard to find someone that is fantastic at data analytics and an amazing people and relationship developer, right?
Sure.
Like that person is impossible to find, right? And so, you think about a lot of like the category managers, and like I've been kind of talking about, like that has a lot to do with networking, people management, and you kind of need that person that's behind or people behind the scenes that's almost feeding the information, and feeding the data, so that they can make the best informed decisions. And those people are not always not always the same people. And I think, part of it for me is looking at our team and understanding that, like, hey, we're still a young, growing team. We've got 8 people, and just added our ninth person to the team. So a lot of people are, we have a food safety person, and we have a distribution manager, and I manage all of the food side, right? And so it's not like we have 12 category managers below us, right? So as we kind of look, look forward and look at how do we, um, how does someone that comes in within my team, how can they better support me? Well, I don't necessarily need multiple category managers to support our business. I need more information coming to me, timing on contracts, um, y- you know, uh, market analysis and things along those lines, so that I can continue to do what I feel I do pretty well, and that's managing the team side of it. So it's really what works really well for our team as it stands today. Jeremy, our supply chain leader, he's our SVP of supply chain. He's amazing at the market analysis and things, and he's constantly kind of playing that role of the data analytic person of kind of always feeding us that information of, let's look at this, let's talk to these guys and such. And then, I'm playing the role of that relationship builder, that networker, to try to figure out, what's the right option, who should we be talking to, what are some of the other options. So I really think that as you continue to grow your team, is going to still apply. You need those specialties.
Yeah, and it's also a balancing act between that human intuition, right, with hard data as you're making decisions in procurement. So I love how you're talking about this team cohesive unit.
Yes.
You touched on a couple tools there in data in general, but what would you say? What piece of technology or tool has made the biggest difference in your ability to, let's say, plan proactively?
Yeah. I think there's a couple things. I guess one's a little bit more reactive, one's a little more, proactive. I think I look at the information that we are able to get from Fresh Concepts, and in particular from a food safety perspective. Um, God forbid that we have some type of recall or something along those lines. Um, you know, the information flow that we receive from Fresh Concepts, and in particular through the portal that they manage, and the food safety team. Um, it to me, it's industry leading because although in the end, I think all the different, management companies, broadliners, anybody that's distributing produce, if are going to, in the end, get to the same place. The out of the gate speed that we get information through the portal, is, to me, it's second to none, in what we have seen as it's developed over the last, handful of years. Um, the other one that, to your point, a little bit more on the proactive side, about a year or so ago, we added Aerostream to, to our toolbox, and it really has helped take our approach to inventory management from more of a reactionary perspective to more of a proactive standpoint, where because we were pretty much just using the broadliners um, data that they were providing to us, and what we found in a lot of occasions, that the updates that we're able to get out of Aerostream are just um, more real time in a lot of cases than what the broadliner themselves were able to provide to us. So it really allowed us to look at, from an inventory management perspective, uh, more in a proactive sense than reactive.
I've heard a couple guests explain the same critical detail about having Aerostream a part of their brand, or even just a part of their position as they move from brand to brand, is the dashboard has put them from a reactive to a proactive mindset. So love that. And then the site evaluation reports, I think you touched on as far as French concepts in the portal. Very, very neat to be able to have someone go in, check cooler, storage temp, location of items stored in that cooler, photograph them, and then you can see them um, your seat. So very, very cool how it can bring boots on the ground all the way up to the corporate office as far as visibility.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's hard for us to get out to all of our restaurants. I'm sure even larger companies than us even have a harder time. It's great to be able to see that. As you said, you'll be able to see those photos. Sometimes we're able to solve some problems right there. Um, with the things that they're sending to us. And I love the fact that they take that feedback that they get from our operators and take that right to our distributors too, um, to be able to see how that's translating in the warehouses.
Absolutely. Because a lot of problems get solved just right there, just with what you described.
Yeah.
All right, I want to wrap up and just hearing about Cooper's Hawk. We haven't set foot in the dining room there. For those who've never been in to dine, what can one expect?
The first thing that goes in my head, you know, Cooper's Hawk is way more than just a restaurant company. I know everyone, probably thinks about the wine, thinks about the food. Those are pieces to the puzzle. It's really it's about the community that has been formed. Um, from day one, if you go all the way back, like, I don't think that there was really ever a goal to have a second restaurant. But as Tim says, it's the community of that first restaurant that pushed us to want to have a second and a third. And so I think that that's a big piece to our company that makes us different. You know, the wine club is obviously a huge factor, and it's what brings our so much of our guests into our restaurant multiple times a month, and it's just a great blend. That community and the wine club, it's just such a great blend of hospitality and experiences. One of the goals of our company is to continue to you talk about like the good life, and oftentimes, that equates to things that are unattainable, things that experiences and opportunities that people cannot, um, you know, uh, can't accomplish on their own. Look at our Italian concept that we just opened in June of 22, Piccolo Buco. That the original location is in Rome. Tim discovered it when he was on vacation there, and he set a goal of how do I bring this to the United States so that more people can experience it. Cooper's Hawk, was founded basically to figure out how do I bring Napa to the Midwest so that more people can experience, great wines from around the world. So it's really just about that democratizing the good life, and understanding how do I bring more opportunities and experiences to our guests and our wine club members that they wouldn't be able to experience on their own.
All right. So, what is exciting about Cooper's Hawk this year? What's going on behind the scenes that everyone should know about?
What's exciting about Cooper's Hawk to me is our innovation. We rolled out last year, we rolled out brunch and happy hour. We always had happy hour, but we wanted to make some specific menu items that were tied directly into happy hour. And brunch was something we used to do brunch many years ago, and it did okay. And we really wanted to kind of ramp it up and do something a little bit different. It's an a la carte brunch menu, spectacular food. Culinary team really did an amazing job of bringing in some great new ingredients to use for it. Um, and both areas have had some great success in bringing some guests into our restaurant in some meal periods that we really weren't attracting guests to. Prior to that. And so I think, I think one of the things that really is exciting is it's how nimble that we can be, as even though that we continue to grow and get bigger and put in more processes and things. When we want to move quickly on something, and brunch and happy hour last year was a great example of that. Those ideas were born in like April or May, and by basically August and September, we had it rolling out to every one of our restaurants. And that just speaks to all the departments, working together to pull that off. So it is fun and exciting to work for a company that can do that and move so quickly. And we're always looking for new ideas. We're excited to this is our 20th anniversary this year. So we're excited to celebrate that in a couple months. We're celebrating in grand fashion with a partnership with Virgin Voyages, and taking a couple thousand wine club members out on a cruise from Bahamas to Key West. So we're really excited about that. Coming up with unique ideas like it's not so much on the procurement side, but those are fun, exciting events to introduce our wine club members to. And we've got some new things that are coming out. Our chef recommendation program is always exciting. We do a different LTO breakfast, or not breakfast, sorry, lunch, dinner, appetizer, and a dessert every 2 months with some new ingredients, new dishes. Those are really exciting for our wine club members to constantly see some new innovating ideas. And it's great working with our culinary team to try to pull those off. We're doing a great job of staying far enough ahead of things so that we can plan for seasonality and such, especially on the produce side. But it's exciting to see some of the innovating ideas that we do for that, as well as some of our wine club events and what we call our Friends of Cooper's Hawk events, where we partner with some celebrity chefs and we'll host an event for 180, 200 people in different markets. Those we can kind of expand out our culinary chops, so to speak, and bring some dishes and things to our guests that they definitely probably would not order in a restaurant.
You guys are having a lot of fun.
Yeah, yeah. I'm not gonna kid you. It's a fun company to work for. It's hard sometimes. Like what the things I just named. Those don't happen easily, and it's a complex supply chain. You might not think about it when you talk about only, a 70 restaurant chain. How hard could it possibly be? I manage over 300 ingredients. We've got, 2 other people on our supply chain that just handle equipment. We've got another individual that's handling almost 1,000, smallwares and paper goods and stuff. So there's a lot of, that doesn't even count the fact that I have one gentleman, Zach, on our team that handles all of the wine distribution, and we do centralized ordering for all of our wine out of our supply chain team. So it's a complex supply chain that we're managing. It's you get people that will come over from larger companies that maybe don't have the depth of ingredients, and think that, hey, a 70 chain restaurant, or 70 restaurant chain is going to be much easier to manage. And it's pretty quick to figure out that it's not so easy, just because we have fewer restaurants. We try to make it as complicated as possible.
It's pretty incredible. I mean, we've only touched on food in this conversation. We could go down a whole other tangent with wine and just government policy there and tariffs, but I will put a pin in it here. I could talk to you all day. Dan, you are so fantastic, so knowledgeable. But really your heart of the brand has come through, and just the fun that you guys are doing a ton of exciting things. Love it. Rent back. Love the partnership with Virgin Voyages. You never know where you're going to need them for transportation of product.
Yep. Yeah. No, I mean, it's a pleasure to work for the company. It's fun. It's exciting. The values of our company, that Tim put together years ago. It just drives everything that we do, whether it's for our team members, our guests, our wine club members, and our vendor partners. It really forges every conversation, every relationship that we have. If we're not making decisions that are based off of our values, then we're making the wrong decision.
All right. Well, now I have to ask Dan, what are the values?
Our values of Cooper's Hawk, and Tim put these together years ago. We care about people. We are different. We're committed to being the best. And you know what? We have fun and celebrate along the way. And like I said, everything that we do has something to do with one of those values.
For those that have been listening and they want to get a hold of you, either to network, to reach out, to work for the brand, how can people find you? Where can they connect with you?
Yeah, LinkedIn's the easiest way. Search for me on LinkedIn. Uh, I would, as we talked about earlier, there's a lot of opportunities to connect with people at different conferences. I had the pleasure to work with the Supply Chain Executive Exchange at the NRA show and at Market Vision. That to me is one of the single best networking events of the year. And if you're a supply chain person trying to, especially if you're young and just starting to kind of forge your career, kickstart your career, I highly recommend looking at that. I'll be there.
100% agreed. I will be there as well in Orlando. I love both of those events. I've been to both and they're incredibly valuable. So I'm going to definitely like that one.
Awesome.
Thank you again and so much, Dan. This has been an awesome, awesome conversation.
I appreciate it, Lauren. It was a lot of fun.
This has been another exciting episode of Grounded. See you next time. That's a wrap on this episode of Grounded. We've covered a lot of ground as we explored what it really takes to run food service behind the scenes. For show notes, highlights, and our latest market insights, visit us at groundedonthepod.com. Grounded is powered by the Buyer's Edge platform, delivering smarter solutions, greater efficiency, and real savings through connected tech, powerful data, and industry expertise. For more information and to get a personal demo of the Buyer's Edge platform, email me at lauren.mitchell@producealliance.com. And if you liked what you heard, subscribe so you don't miss an episode.